G'day guys, welcome to the Noob Sparrow podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Shrek, and today is a interesting interview about Southern Queensland and spearfishing in this area. If you don't live in this area, I don't know how relevant it's going to be for you. However, before we get into it, I've got some advice about what accessories you need to buy, or what I think you need to buy if you're getting a GoPro Hero 7 Black. Which is, Turbo and I have just purchased 2 new cameras, so I'm going to write a series about sort of how to get into using it, and it's going to go up on the spearfishing.com.au blog, which is Adreno, one of our major show sponsors. So if you're interested in following along with that, I'll talk about it through the future episodes. But today I'm just going to talk about the accessories you need to buy apart from the actual GoPro Hero Black unit, if you want to get started filming some of your dives and stuff. So today, like I said, it's an interview with Trevor Ketchion, who's a veteran local spearo here in the Southern Queensland area. Him and I discuss early target species, sort of the first 5 that you might start targeting in this area. We go over the sort of the locations, the broad strokes, and we give a couple of spots, and we just sort of talk about, you know, the right weathering conditions and how to sort of just make your way getting started in this area. So it's good for that, and there's some tips and stuff sprinkled through, so if you're not in the area, maybe there's a couple of nuggets in there, but let us know. Getting lots of love on YouTube channel at the moment, and I would encourage you, if you enjoy this episode, probably go up there and watch the video of Trevor and I doing it live in my garage actually at the time, and as usual he's wearing a mask, which is pretty funny. So yeah, follow us on YouTube and subscribe on there, that'd be great. Okay, so Turbo and I bought a couple of GoPro Hero Black 7s. So I've written a post for spearfishing.com.au about what accessories you need to accompany your GoPro Hero Black 7 to get started filming spearfishing. Now there's a list here, and some of them might be common sense and no-brainers for you. However, I'd just like to quickly go over some of them before we get into this interview with Trevor. So if it's obvious, just bear with me. But a lot of people probably aren't aware of just what you actually need. So we bought this GoPro Hero Black 7. I think they were about $650 each. No, maybe slightly cheaper, $620 each, Australian dollars. And super stoked they arrived. I still haven't even really got them out and started using them. However, I'm already going through a list of the other items that we need to make sure we've got. Now, number one is, I've got on this list so far as an external hard drive. If you're using a solid state drive in your laptop or PC, that's perfect, but you don't want to use that space with your video footage. You want to keep it on an external. And what I'm hearing from a few guys that have filmed a lot, and I'm sort of asking for advice from guys like Daniel Mann and Buddy Walsh, they're advising me, you know, be clear with the way you label your video files. And Trevor Ketchion's also been a bit helpful, though he belies his technical expertise with it. But really be really clear with the way you label your files. The way I think I'm going to do it is I'm going to have a trip folder for the specific filming session. Now I'm going to have 3 folders inside for each. I'm going to have top shots, which is like your best footage, and then I'm going to have B-roll, so your supporting footage to help tell a story, and then I'm going to have another folder called Meh, which is like, you might use it, but it's not the best footage, and then the rest of it's just going in the bin. That's kind of my broad strokes plan, but that'll all go on an external hard drive, and probably get a 2 terabyte or a 5 terabyte drive, just so there's plenty of space there for footage. And want to stay on top of sorting it fairly fast, even though if I don't edit it up and make full film straight away. The next thing you need is definitely a decent PC. Turbo loves his Macs. I'm a Windows guy. To be honest, neither of us have done enough video editing yet to really have a feel for this. If you're going to film 4K and edit in 4K, like you're going to need a super good rig with a really high quality video card. So just keep that in mind, because that's an extra expense guys don't think about. It's great to film the stuff on the GoPro, and you can edit lots of these films on apps and stuff now, but if you want high quality, you're going to need a video editing suite and a powerful PC. Next thing you need as a spare battery, because you can only expect about 45 to 90 minutes juice out of your GoPro Hero Black 7. So if you're going to go aftermarket with batteries, I've read good reviews on Wasabi and Smarttree, but the actual GoPro batteries are pretty good as well, I think. I don't think the third-party ones outperform it. They're just sort of comparable and maybe a little bit cheaper. The other thing you need to get is a super suit. So a super suit keeps your GoPro safe and watertight to 60 meters. And it also it's great for avoiding drops and rocks and scratches that my clumsy sausage fingers cause. So definitely get a super suit. There's more benefits than just keeping it watertight to 60 meters, even out of water. It helps protect your camera a bit more. SD cards. Now, we've used SD cards with audio stuff, and Turbo's had a DSLR, and we've still got a Sony a6000. So the SD cards we tend to like are the SanDisk Extreme V30 cards, and a lot of guys love the 64 gig size. Some people will say the 128 can cause issues, but we're probably going to go the 128 gig version with the SanDisk Extreme V30 cards, and but other highly regarded sort of brands are the Lexar 1000X U3s, the Delkin 1900 x V60s, and the Samsung Evo Select U3s. But I think we're just going to stick with SanDisk Extreme V30s because they've performed well for us in the past. And So, by the way, some of these products I'll link up in the show notes, so it's an easy reference point for you. I'll probably try and link up the articles in future. So there's going to be a series of GoPro 7 Black articles about just how to get started spearfishing with it, and I'll just write down what I'm learning and researching as I go. So that's pretty much what this sort of list is. The other thing the last thing on this list at the moment is the head strap mount. It's arguably the best first-person mount for Spearos, as long as you can get your head movement under control and slow your movements down and actually get some good footage. I think the head strap seems the best, unless you get third-person footage, which is even better. But I'll talk about that in a sec. But if you use a gun mount, and you want to film your mate, you're potentially pointing a loaded spear gun at your mate, so it's not a great idea. Get the head strap, and a good one that I've seen is the chin. It's got a head strap with a chin strap off it. That's made by Mako, so if you go to their website, you can have a look at the chin strap headband combo from Mako. And because Turbo had an old second-hand GoPro on a head strap mount that I lent him, and he lost it in 80 meters of water. So that was fantastic. But the other trick guys use is they put their head strap mount underneath their wetsuit hood and the mask, and that will obviously help prevent it from dropping off, but you don't want to wear it over the top, that's for sure. If you do look at further mounts, look at a tray mount. So it's basically two handles, or you can use a pole. You don't really need a gimbal underwater. It's because with the stabilization, internal stabilization software in the GoPro itself, and being underwater, the footage is smooth enough on its own. But look at a tray mount, or some sort of extension pole for holding the GoPro to help you, like if you're filming your mates or they're filming you. These third-person shots are fantastic, but there's a whole skill in learning to film, that's for sure. And that's something that Turbo and I are going to be paying attention to and learning a lot as we go. So, but yeah, that's pretty much my list for today. So yeah, check it out in today's show notes. But without too much mucking around, let's hook into today's interview with Trevor Ketchion and talking about spearfishing in the Southern Queensland spearfishing area. Now, I don't know about you, but I love new gear, and spearfishing.com.au have got a huge range, mad flat shipping rate, especially in Australia. And if you use the code NoobSpearo, you not only support us, but you get $20 off every purchase over $200. That's right, pump in the code NoobSpearo at checkout, NOOBSPEARO at spearfishing.com.au, and you will save $20 on every purchase over $200. No brainer. Thanks, Adreno. Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. It's a membership platform that makes it easy for artists and creators like the Noob Spearo to get paid. Basically, you support us per episode at any level that you choose. Head over to patreon.com/noobspearo. Today's episode powered by patron listeners just like you. G'day guys, welcome to today's Noob Spearo podcast, joined by the ever classy Trevor Ketchion. This is round 3.
Indeed, yes.
Round 3. So Trevor's got a couple of cool pages that I think you guys should check out, especially if you're in the Southern Queensland area spearfishing. Submerged Psychos has got some absolutely magic clips on there.
I don't guarantee the sanity of the person who puts them up, but there's some entertaining things there depending on your preference of what you like to watch.
Yeah. Trev every now and then does some like mini lectures with a sock puppet and just teaches people about spearfishing concepts. It's pretty cool. And the other thing is, on Facebook there's a group called Rubbish Spearos.
Indeed.
And it's not Spearos that are rubbish, otherwise I'd be the only member. It's actually about guys getting together and cleaning up like different waterways and stuff, and they've had some mad success with that so far.
It's only been going for about a month. The idea behind it is just to try and motivate spearfishermen to get out there and just pick up litter, or anyone really. Also trying to kind of create that same environment you get when you go out, you go spearfishing, you shoot a fish, you come home, you put the photo up on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, and you get a whole bunch of likes, and it gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling that everyone loves you. Trying to create the same culture with going and picking up rubbish. So you go out, you pick up rubbish, put a photo up, and people can say, good job, great work, and it kind of will then hopefully generate a new movement in spearfishing where, yes, we're taking from the ocean, but we're also going to kind of help the ocean because we can see what's under the surface. Other people can't. They just go along with their everyday going, oh no, it's crystal clean and blue. It's wonderful.
So there's a few of these events getting organised in our area, but if you're not in our area, that's fine. Jump on Rubbish Spearos on Facebook. The link will be in the comments, and sign up, because if you want to get involved in like some rubbish removal in your area, then this page will be good for helping you to coordinate that, and you can get advice about getting government grants and
eventually once I learn how to do it myself. But yes.
But there's another guy on there who can help teach us with that as well.
It's pretty good, and it's the easiest competition ever. You pick up rubbish, you put up a photo, and you can win a $50 Adreno voucher. It's pretty good.
And if you're like organising, like a lot of us frequent these same sort of areas of reef, and I was talking with Trevor about a specific area here that I want to do a clean up on, and it's great if you can coordinate a whole bunch of people, because you can make a real big difference in a specific place in one day and make a real good impact, and it's something I think a lot of us could get involved with.
It's very easy. And everything ends up in the water anyway, so even if you're just walking down the street and you see some litter, pick it up, put it in the bin. That counts. It's good.
You've had a real mindset shift for this, haven't you? Because it seems like you... No, I'm not saying you weren't like that before, but now you're just absolutely crazy.
So it's... What's the best way to explain it? If you don't look, you don't see. So it's very easy in the modern world that we live in, because it's physically everywhere, and you just phase it out. You don't know it's there, you don't see it, you don't think about it, it doesn't exist. It's amazing what the human mind can do. And then when you start actually looking, and Craig McNiven organised a cleanup day for the Tweed, and I went down and went, we'll pick up a couple of things here and there, and it won't be that bad. And then you get in the water and you're pulling out tonnage of rubbish from an area that's only 100 square metres.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it kind of clicks your mind again, and you start looking. And you'll notice it's everywhere. You go for a walk down the park, there's litter. You go to a national park, there's litter. You go to the beach, there's litter. You go for a swim almost anywhere, any creek, and there's just litter, there's rubbish, there's... And it starts to play in your mind. You drive down the M1 and it's just rubbish the whole way. And once you start looking and seeing, you start to notice just how bad it has become, unfortunately.
And like you kind of identified too, it's actually good training for you spearfishing. You're working on your fitness and your breath hold, and you're cleaning up one of the areas hopefully that we can preserve for the future and our children and shit.
Oh, definitely. Well, when I started, I could swim 100 metres and I was rooted. Now I can tow a kayak for 4 kilometres with 300 kilograms of rubbish on it.
Wow.
And that's only over a span of doing it for a month.
Okay.
No, it is very good training.
All right, let's so today we're going to talk specifically about spearfishing in the Southern Queensland area, how to get started in this area, And Trev's been diving here for a long time, as have I. Not nearly as long as he has, but we're going to lay out sort of some good actionable information if you want to get started spearfishing in the Southern Queensland spearfishing area. After that, we're going to hook into a little bit of a conversation about boats, buying boats, some of the different options available, and maybe a couple more questions about rubbish spearos as well. So let's hook in, Trev. There's a really good Facebook page that you and I are admins on.
Not anymore, I escaped. You still are.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. So it's called Southern Queensland Spearfishing. That'll be linked up in the vid. So head along there if you are spearfishing in the Southern Queensland in the Southern Queensland area. There's 5,000 members, I think, on there, and there are some really good, helpful people on there. There's only a couple of dickheads. We seem to police it much better these days.
It's any forum, you're going to get some people that like to get their enjoyment from the detriment of others, but they're becoming less and less prevalent.
This guy wrote a dickhead comment on the other day about some poor guy got his fin stolen, and I wrote something on there like, a guy reported your comment as, but I want to leave it here so people can see how much of a dickhead you are. And then about 4 or 5 other people got on the bandwagon, and then I wondered why I wasn't getting any more notifications. I went back on and the guy deleted his comment. He deleted his own comment, he learned.
It can be tricky, particularly in those situations, because it's horrible for the person, and he's learnt not to do that again, which is what led to them getting stolen. But it's still horrible that they got stolen. So you don't kind of have to rub it in a person's face when they've made a mistake. That's not going to help them learn from the mistake. It's good to give them constructive criticism and help educate them instead of being like, nah. Yeah, that doesn't work.
Is that your general sort of social media advice? Just
to try and be more constructive criticism over dick swinging and saying how much better you are than somebody else. Definitely.
Yeah, courtesy goes a long way, doesn't it?
100%.
All right. Okay, so Southern Queensland, we've got, to the north of us, we've got the Sunshine Coast. You and me live in Brisbane, and we dive sort of the islands out here and sometimes the bay when it allows us to. And then below us, we've got the Gold Coast and the northern New South Wales area.
We're very lucky. Within a 7-hour drive in any direct north or south, we've got from Southern Barrier Reef right down to northern New South Wales, colder climate. So we're very lucky. We get access to a myriad of species. It's good.
How many species do you think we've got here to target spearfishing?
The record book probably has 400 or 500 different species, and that's of the ones that are kind of worth chasing. There's probably another 100 species of ones that people don't shoot anymore, usually from self-imposed regulations. Like, it's not because we're not allowed to shoot it, but spearfishermen are kind of been like, it's not worth shooting.
Okay. All right, so guys starting in this sort of general area, what are sort of the 4 or 5 species that they might start off targeting?
I think the most common ones, and this is going back to when I started as well, will be your Luderick species, which everyone will rip on and tell you how horrible they are, and it's purely because they've eaten one that they haven't bled or gutted properly. So if you shoot a black drummer or a silver drummer and you're starting out, gut it, bleed it very quickly, and the meat's not that bad. If you forget to do that, the meat can be very, very bitter and not taste particularly well. So you've got your drummers and your black ludericks and your grass weed-eating fish, and you'll see them a lot in your creeks and headlands and in close. Then probably the next most prevalent starting out fish are your flatheads, because they're a nice, when you get the hang of swimming up current, chasing them instead of coming down current, they'll be sitting there stationary, and you can kind of come up from behind them and get, well, that sounds a bit sexual, but you can kind of come from their blind spot and, wait, no, still sexual. You can shoot them a bit easier.
Okay, flathead, and
good. Then you go on.
We've had Luderick and drummer.
Yeah. Then you got your Brims and your Tarwhine species, which are all, they look similar when you're starting out. The legal sizes are close to being the same, so you don't have to stress too much about the differences. But you got your Brims and your Tarwhines, which are usually a coastal fish, which you'll see in your areas where you're starting out in your shallower water.
They can be bloody hard too to shoot.
Brim? Oh, when you're first starting out, they're tricky. Like everything, it kind of accelerates with you as you move along. So when you start out, what you think is a spectacular fish will slowly increase as you get more into it. Because I can remember years and years ago when I shot my first legal parrotfish, and I was stoked because up until that point they were incredibly flighty, difficult fish to hunt. And we'll put that in as, say, the 4th fish is your parrotfish species. Because when you're starting out, they're not easily attainable. But then as you've been going for a few more years, you move on to other things. So it's kind of a sliding scale, if you would. And then, I'd say the fifth one when you're starting out, most people are looking for are the black spot tuskfish, because they will move into shallower areas, particularly during their spawning seasons. And you can get a nice fish still in 10 metres of water, a decent big black spot. And I remember my first black spot over 5 kilos, and I was stoked. It was just one of those fish I'd been working up to for years. So that'd be your main 5 when you're starting out that I can think of would be your drummers, your Ludericks, that species of family, then your flatheads, then your brims and your tarwhines, then your parrotfish species, then your black spots. And always mixed in and through them would be your pelagics, but they're not something you can really target. They're something that will be there or won't be there. They're a bit more difficult that way.
Okay, cool. And did you mention moe?
I didn't put them as a targeted fish because they cop a lot of flack, unfortunately. But depending on the species of the Morwong, some of them are beautiful. Like a slaty brim, you bleed that and fillet that quickly. Beautiful flesh. Your more blubber lips, your tropical Morwongs, they can be a bit more bitter. But also, with any fish, it comes down to who's cooking it. And not to sound racist at all, but I've found that you can give the worst fish to an Italian chef, and they will bring it out and you'll just be asking for more. And I mean, like, get the worst fish you can imagine, give it to them to cook, and magnifique.
Cool. While you're looking at these fish, there are a range of fish that you'll be able to encounter. Another one's surgeonfish.
Oh, indeed. And the same thing. Some species very yummy, some species not so yummy. The grey sawtail ones are probably your better ones of the surgeonfish.
I was just going to make a couple of recommendations. If you go into BCF, there's a Queensland Fish Guide in there, and you want to just maybe note down, mark the pages of the species that Trevor's identified. And what you really want to look for is not so much colour, because at depth you lose that anyway. And so pay a lot of attention to the distinctive features on the fish and the actual silhouette. And if you can watch some videos, like maybe on the Submerged Psychos YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of these fish, maybe not so much the ones we've talked about just now, because these are more entry-level species, but you'll see them being shot and what they look like in the water. Sometimes it looks a lot different than how they look on dry land.
Oh, definitely. It's all silhouettes. The other one that you'll find where most of your identifying species for fishies is the mouth, eyes, and like the brow and shape of the mouth and the nose is what will determine a lot of things. And just by focusing on those 3 points, you can usually pick a lot of different fish from each other.
Yeah, it took me a while actually, like because I moved here from New Zealand, so I had to learn all the species. And for me, it was kind of a species by species approach. It was like you get the 3. I think it was like the blubber lip Morwong, and then I moved into the gold spotted one, which I thought was quite good, and then flathead, and then into the brim and stuff like that. And it was a while till I shot black spot tuskfish and parrot and some of the fish like that. And then there's always a new species to approach. But
definitely. And the trick I was taught was learn all your protected species off by heart.
Yeah.
And then try it. Learn your protected species, the rough guidelines, because each species has their own legal limits. There's not too many individual ones. Shoot one, fillet it, eat it. You might love something that your best mate hates. Everyone has their own personal flavours and tastes, so it's worth a crack.
We were talking about that before, like visitors from overseas come here and shoot species that we wouldn't normally consider, like batfish, barracuda's another one. It's not commonly eaten here, but people from overseas often love it. And when you're new and starting out, it's a lot of the species that other spearos don't shoot are highly sustainable because they're never targeted.
Oh, definitely.
And so as long as you eat them, I don't really care.
No, as long as it's always a thing of wastage, but if you're just shooting a fish to eat it, and as long as it's not protected and an issue, that's great. Like, it's food. It's not being wasted. And small barracuda taste very nice. Big barracuda, your lips will tingle and you can get a bit sick sometimes with ciguatera. But your smaller barracudas are very tasty. Okay. I quite enjoy small barracuda. It's just finding small ones is tricky.
Okay, cool. I'll link this book up in the show in the comments down below as well. But Queensland Fish Guide at BCF looks like the best one. There is another book I've heard of as well. I asked Turbo for it, but he didn't have it on him. So
that's right. Another good one you got to buy directly from the publisher is Grant's Guide to Fishers.
That's it. That's the one I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, he knows his stuff, and he's also got a Facebook page. So if you ever have a really tricky one, he's really good to deal with. 99% of the time, you can send him a photo, and he'll actually tell you everything about the fish. No, he's a brilliant person. Good person.
I'd like to do some more species by species stuff on the Noob Sparrow podcast, but
definitely.
We'll get there. All right, let's go into the areas. So I saw a question posed the other day. What's better, the Sunshine Coast or the Gold Coast for shore diving?
It's a tricky one because it all is dependent on time of year, conditions, and those kind of things. Sunshine Coast is a lot more affected by visibility. It gets clean and dirty very quickly. You can have an hour gap of time and it can go from 20 metres viz to a metres viz, depending on tides and wind directions and swells. And completely different species that you're hunting. I mean, Sunshine Coast versus New South Wales. Not New South Wales, northern New South Wales. There's no real shore diving. Well, there is, but there isn't off Brisbane. Just because of the bay and it holds a lot of dirty water. You used to be able to shore dive Redcliffe up until about 6 or 7 years ago, but I haven't seen viz there in a long time. But someday, maybe, hopefully again.
Guys were shore diving there last weekend, I think, or the weekend before.
Good on them.
And they said they have 5 or 6 metres viz.
Oh, definitely. You can get good fish there, but I haven't seen clean water in a while. But if there is clean water, it's worth a look. But again, check with your local fisheries department for where you can and where you can't and the normal rigmarole.
I remember the Gold Coast there's a lot more current down there generally, although the Sunshine Coast does also have spots that are really current affected. However, Gold Coast seems worse for it.
Yes, well, you make a very good point. So the Sunshine Coast has a lot of bays that get you out of the current. So there's a lot of places where you can swim around less impeded and have to worry about it. Whereas the Gold Coast is, if you look at the shape of the country, there's no real protection there. The EAC, when it's enclosed, comes straight down and then hits that and pushes outwards. So, no, you can definitely cop a lot more current. I know I've had a few days when I used to physically be able to shore dive better off Kingscliff, getting back and like kissing the sand because you've been swimming against an outgoing current for like an hour just to get back in. So,
now, one thing that annoys spearfishermen is talking specifically about specific spots, and there's good reason for that, because if you start mentioning specific spots in a public place, everyone goes there.
Oh, definitely.
And it gets smashed, and even relatively well-known areas can be just covered in spearfishermen too fast.
Yes.
However, there's some broad areas maybe that we could mention. Gold Coast, you already mentioned Kingscliff. Let's just talk about some of the legal areas down in the Gold Coast. Is that all right?
As in where you can't, or
where you can't. What are some general guidelines for not being able to spearfish?
So Tweed River. Okay, so general guidelines for Queensland is any public jetty south of Noosa. So anyone that's a public jetty, you're not allowed to spearfish or go within 100 metres of. So that's your sand pumping jetties, any jetty where a ferry can moor up to, anything that's for the use of the public, cannot spear. Private is a different kettle of fish, and it's a bit of a grey area because technically it's trespassing on private property if you get within too much or you touch it, but you can swim around it still. That's a grey area. It all depends on who has a better lawyer on the day, whether you get in trouble. The other generalisations is any estuary, unless it is determined... how do I put this properly? A lot of estuaries will be not allowed to spearfish, and that's on a local area kind of setup. But if you're allowed to in the river... trying to think of the right way to put it. If there's nothing saying you can't spearfish that river, you're only allowed to spearfish until where it stops being brackish water. So once you get to a point where it's fresh water, you're not allowed to spearfish any further up that creek.
So enclosed waterways in general are mostly, for the most part, not allowed. However, there are a couple of exceptions.
Yes. Well, it's meant to be the other way, but on a federal level, yes. On a state level, you're not allowed to do a lot of them. On a federal level, you're meant to be allowed to do all of them. So you've always got to check with your local government as well as the general rules.
Okay.
And then, you've got your public appreciation areas, which are individual areas where you're just not allowed to spearfish because of safety issues, which is fair. Because you could imagine, hey, I'm scuba diving on this wreck, this is lovely, there's a spear gun pointed towards me. It could cause dangerous things. And like, let's say it's only 2 meters viz, your gun shoots 5 meters, you never know what's...
Yeah, at the back of it. Yeah, it's a good point.
So I can understand public appreciation. I don't agree with some of the places they've chosen 100%, but I still have to obey and respect the rules.
Just be aware too, like some of the spots on the Gold Coast, like we're talking northern New South Wales, so you need to have a fishing license for that state.
Definitely.
And you can get a 1 or 2 or 3 day pass on their website.
Yep.
And just pay for a fishing pass. You don't want to get caught with that one.
Oh no, they're not, and which is fair. They get a bit angry about that.
So Kingscliff is northern New South Wales. There's some ground in the Tweed River which you can spear, which Trevor's been cleaning up a lot lately. There's some good spots to start down that end. Out the front of the Gold Coast Seaway, provided you're not, because you're not allowed in the seaway at all. However, outside the walls you can, but the jet skis cut the corners as well when they come out at the front, and so you can get run down.
Oh yeah, always have floats. If you're in a highly populated area, even if you're diving with a reel gun, just have a mate hold the float, whoever's on the surface, and you take turns, because you got to be careful. I've got a 3-meter kayak when I pick up rubbish, and people still nearly run me over.
Yeah. If you're curious about finding spots, like particularly down the Gold Coast, I would jump on Google Earth and you will find quite a lot of good information from just scanning up and down that coastline yourself.
Oh, definitely. But look out for surfers as well and certain breaks.
Yeah,
they can run you over too by accident, and they can't turn very well. So if you're on certain headlands in certain areas, you just got to be mindful of the surfers as well.
Yeah. Okay, moving up. So Brisbane for the most part is no shore dive spearfishing for the most part.
Yeah, 90% of the time, just because of visibility.
Yeah. Moving north to the Sunshine Coast, if you go right up, Point Arkwright off Coolum can be quite good.
Any of the headlands where you're allowed to has rocks, but essentially there is rock from the bottom end of Bribie until you get to north of Noosa, and it's just spread out, and none of it's charted. Easiest way to go, if you are wanting to go look for it, is get up high on a cleaner day and look. You'll be able to see it, and then judge your shore dive off that. So somewhere like Rainbow Beach, go right up on the top of the sand dunes. They're quite tall. Look out and you'll see your rock. And that's how I used to kind of look for my shore diving options, was just to get up high and have a look.
Brings me to another good point though. Like a lot of these spots involve a good swim.
Yes.
And just be aware that if you swim 400 meters out to a reef, that's 400 meters you've got to swim back with fish and possibly against current. So planning around tides and water movement is essential.
Yes. Usually run. So I don't do too much shore diving anymore, but what we used to do is we do the 2 hours up to high and run with the current, and then the 2 hours away from high, and that would then draw you one way or draw you the other way, and you can kind of plan out which way you're going to move once you get the idea of it. And I've stuffed it up many times and had to swim out against current and vice versa, and it can be very tricky. It's always good to have someone else with you. I definitely don't recommend shore diving by yourself. I'd always take someone else.
I'm going to link up a couple of articles down below too. There's Noob Spiro's Guide to Shore Dive Spearfishing. There's 2 parts to that, because there's a few things we haven't covered here, like entry and exit points and things like that. You need to plan and do your sort of homework before you hit any of these spots.
Oh, yeah.
What's up, Shrek and Turbo? It's Jeremy here from Spearing Magazine. You guys have been doing such a killer job. I just wanted to let you guys know that all the back issues are now like fully sold out. So if you guys want to get Spearing Magazine, though, we've come up with an international subscription just for you guys. You can get like the digital edition or the print edition. We're gonna ship that to you guys. Just get over to spearingmagazine.com. Okay, guys, keep doing what you're doing. Jeremy out. God bless America. God bless President Trump. I love you guys.
Do you want to replicate some of the best dives that you've ever experienced and capture some of those elusive species that only show up at certain times during the year? you need to go to Amazon and get yourself a Spearo log, created by none other than Shrek and Turbo, along with help from 3 experts that we've had on the show. We had Pat Swanson from New Zealand, Grant Laidlaw from Scotland, and Kevin Daly from the UK. These guys got on board, helped me create and craft a spearfishing log that can help you to replicate those days that stay strong in your memory, but maybe they stay strong in your memory, but you've forgotten some of the variables that culminated in that successful day. So you can capture these details every day, every time you go diving, with 100 templates in the Spearo log, available on Amazon now. So, but now that you've got maybe a general overview and some information with regards to species, I wanted to move on to ideal conditions. So you're going on to some weather apps, and you're going to pay attention to the swell, wind, and what else, Trevor?
Tides is a big one. So the larger the tide, the more chance you are to encounter a lot of current. So look for your smaller tides if you're wanting a nice easy swim. But in saying that, as you become more comfortable and more confident in the water, you can go out in a lot more difficult conditions. But when you're first starting out, try and look for the nicer conditions, particularly shore diving, because you don't have a boat there to bail you out. Your everything is dependent on your ability.
Yeah. So if you can find a day in Queensland where you've had not northerly winds or even easterly winds for a couple of days, and it's under 10 to 15 knots wind, it's going to be good from that front. Then you're looking for smaller tides, and you want to dive on the high tide. So get in maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours before.
It depends on the area, but yeah, the high tide's going to be your best chance at cleaner water closer to shore.
Okay, cool.
Because everything's running into the creeks, pushing the dirty water and holding the dirty water at bay. At low tide, everything's filtering out of the creeks.
Yep.
And most of those shore dive areas is where near a mouth of a creek or near a river, and that dirty water is going to then inundate the area where you're swimming.
Okay, so that's wind and tide, which are two of your big factors. The other one is swell. And I personally would recommend, if it's under a metre, you're pretty much good to go. Between 1 metre and, say, 1.6, it depends on the direction of it and the gap between sets. However, it could be worth going.
It depends. And the other one that can cause you headaches with swell, particularly in shallower ground, is the surge starts to affect you. And the more swell there is, the more sand gets churned up. So you could have 20 metres visibility, but you end up with heaps of sand in the water.
Yep.
You can only see 1 or 2 metres.
Yeah. And you're going to be diving shallow if you're starting, so the sand really buggers things up.
Oh, yeah. And you can end up high and dry. We've had it many years ago where the wave moves out and all of a sudden someone's lying on a rock, and then you get punished when the wave comes back in. So it's always good to keep a constant idea of what the swell's doing with regards to you, because if you're in a metre of water with 1.5 metre swell, you can end up in a lot of pain.
Yeah, good advice. There's some amazing species to be had off Queensland. You can encounter Spanish mackerel from shore, jewfish. There's quite a number of pelagic species. There's some really challenging reef species here. The fishing is good when it's on.
Oh yeah, well, it's like any spot. On its day, it's good, and you can go back there 100 times and not have that same thing. But as we've mentioned before, write everything down. Yeah.
If you want to format for writing things down, there's a Spearo log which is sold at spearfishing.com.au. Pick yourself up a copy there. It's good for logging down conditions. But even if you don't do that, just have a spreadsheet and keep track of the conditions yourself. You can just do your own. Trevor had a notebook for years that he wrote by hand, and they work just fine as well. But if you want something that's all pre-filled out for you, get hold of Spearo log. Okay, what are the apps that you use in this area and you would recommend to new guys that are considering going out this weekend? What apps would you recommend they look at to help them judge whether the weather's worthwhile?
Whatever you're comfortable with, really. But don't use just one. So take 4 or 5 different ones and then make an idea off the information from those and kind of work off the rule of averages. So if one is saying 10 knots, one is saying 15 knots, one is saying 30 knots, it's more likely to be
15 to 20.
Yeah. Don't go with the one that says, oh, no, it's going to be 10. Yeah, it's definitely going to be 10.
Yeah.
Because it's all just educated guesses, which can be wrong. So always take everything with a grain of salt. Plan for the worst, expect the best. Or hope for the best, probably the best way to put it. Expect the worst, hope for the best. There we go.
Guys get pissed off when you continually ask for viz and condition reports through Southern Queensland spearfishing. You almost, I mean, I can understand why people do it. You don't want to waste 90 minutes driving somewhere for no reason.
Unfortunately, it's virtually impossible for me to give you a report. So let's say I went diving today at 11 o'clock on the high tide, and I had 10 metres viz. Now, you're saying, hey, how was the viz? I say, oh, it's 10 metres here. Let's say it rains 5 millimetres tonight, and there is a larger run-out tide because of a full moon. Tomorrow, you could have 0 metres viz in that exact same spot. So for you to ask for a viz report, I can give you an answer, but it's necessarily wrong. So people always asking, you can't really answer it correctly. It makes it very difficult. And it also shows a bit, this could just be my own personal thing, but if someone is asking for a viz report before deciding to go spearfishing, they're not really into it. They're not really wanting to go. They're like, I'm looking for a reason not to go spearfishing tomorrow. Someone please tell me the water's dirty. Yeah. It's best to just be like, okay, it's within a safe weather window. Let's go. Yeah, there's too many variables like thermoclines and everything else.
I've done that before, got up the Sunshine Coast and I thought it was going to be good, and I've driven 90 minutes and it's just a brown muck, and the swells is pounding in and I've gone out anyway.
Oh yeah, and it can be tricky, and you do have days that are horrible, but you can also have it go the other way and you're like, oh, it's going to be ridiculously bad. You get there and for some unknown, strange reason, there's a clean pocket of water surrounded by filth, but there's just a clean pocket of water that you can still dive in and have a good day. So.
And that's also why you want to write that stuff down, because you can replicate that again next year. Everyone's going, oh, it's going to be crap, it's going to be crap.
But,
and maybe,
not 100% of the time, but it does start to give you patterns you can follow.
Yeah, for sure. And like you sort of said, like when you go and you in these bad days or these borderline days, you start to develop an internal sort of matrix for judging whether or not you think it's actually going to be worthwhile. And there's these broad sort of ideas you can have about judging the conditions based on looking at it. But if you really are keen and you love spearing, you're just going to go all the time.
Yeah. What you can do, and what some spear fishermen who will remain nameless do, is who are much better at making friends than I am. They develop contacts in all the different areas, and they have a lot more freedom than I do. And what they'll do is they'll just get the contacts to tell them when the conditions are right, and then they'll just go. So they more reactively go than having to plan things out in advance, which is good. And if you're more flamboyant and better at making friends than I am, that's a great way to have just different people in different areas that will call you and say, hey, now the conditions are good, and that's when you go there.
Yeah. Or not friends that give you bum stares all the time
that's
and tell
what
you
I
it's
would
crap.
end up with. They'd be like, the conditions are really good right now, 9 hours north, and then they go to where you don't normally dive and have a great day.
All right, helpful websites, particularly around finding out if a spot is legal. Where do we go?
Website-wise, it's tricky. Best just to contact the local fisheries department to get them to tell you. Otherwise, you can look at Department of Primary Industries and all the ones that have the statute law that you can read through and find the individual stuff. But
it's tricky.
Yeah, contact fisheries. Like I've done it in a few places. Many years ago contacted the ones at Jump and Pin, and they actually sent me out maps that they'd drawn everything onto.
Wow.
And they gave them very easily. They just email them to you and you can see exactly where everything was. So always contact them first.
I want to get hold of all of that stuff and link it up at noobspiro.com, but I just haven't done it yet. It's a big job.
It's tricky. There's so many little individual bits in so many different documents. It's not compiled yet.
So I think we've sort of given the broad strokes on areas, finding spots, weather and conditions, species. What are some of the other common questions that maybe we haven't addressed about spearfishing in this area, particularly for first-timers?
Boat diving or still shore diving? Because it's slightly different between the two.
Let's just stick with shore diving for now.
Chat. One good one that used to be is joining clubs, and it still is, particularly if you're on the Gold Coast. Join the Tweed Gold Coast Freedivers. It gives you a ton of information from people who have been doing it for 30 years. You don't have to learn everything for yourself. There used to be one on the sunny coast, but unfortunately it isn't there anymore. Maybe someday in the future again, hopefully. But learning from others is a fantastic source of information. It's much more helpful. It's like anything. If you see someone else hit their hand with a hammer, you're less inclined to hit yourself with a hammer. So I would recommend learning from others' mistakes and others' knowledge than having to do everything yourself, because it just saves time. Yeah.
One other thing you can do is, like, say you've got this area that you think's going to be good. Get a Google Earth screenshot of it and go into your local dive shop, which probably means a Dreno, and go up to some of the guys and just say, look, this is where I'm thinking about going. Do you know anything about it?
Learning from others' experience definitely comes in handy. A lot of guys will be a bit apprehensive to share their experience because there is a lot of trust issues in spearfishing, but a lot of the time they'll at least give you some very general knowledge to help you out.
You have trust issues and mum issues too, don't you?
Not so much mum issues, but definitely trust issues. And a lot of your better divers have been burnt many times.
No, it's true. It's true.
They were like, oh yeah, no, here, look, I'll help you out. I'll let you know the rundown. Then a few days later, there's 100 people where they've helped that one person out. It can be very tricky. And once you do develop a reputation for being not a blabbermouth, but less trustworthy, it can be very hard to break that. Yeah. Very hard. Long memories in spearfishing. And like most sports and hobbies and things, people remember the bad a lot better than the good.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier as well, developing your own code of ethics, especially with regards to species, spots, all these things you develop over time. And keeping things under your hat, especially when people have taken you to their spots, is definitely crucial. So
one thing I learned, and a way to judge it, and it could be different for every diver, is if it's something that is your own and you found it and you've dove it, if you want to tell someone a bit of information about that, that's not so much the end of the world. But if it's anything that anyone else has told you or anywhere that anyone else has taken you, you've got to consider it as like their thing. If you start spruiking about it or telling other people about it, not only will you most likely burn your bridge with that person and not get taken again, but he will then tell others, and it'll just end up intensifying to a point where you may find yourself not trusted by a lot of people, that even though you were trying to impress someone, sometimes that person,
or even just be helpful, too helpful,
it can bite. Like I had it many years ago with a very good diver around Brisbane. This is when I was like 17, 18, I was trying to impress that diver in order to gain his trust, but in me telling him information, I was showing him in a certain aspect that I was not trustworthy enough, if that makes sense. So in trying to impress that person, I actually was detrimental.
Yeah. Yep, keep spots under your hat. That's good advice. Had a couple of questions here from the New Spiro community. Matt Barrett says, can you give me precise GPS coordinates for some of your sunny coast spots?
Well, they wouldn't really be secrets if I did. And a lot of them aren't really dove with precise coordinates. A lot of the sunny coast is very large, sprawling areas, and it all depends on the day where the fish will be. So it's best just to get in and kind of go with the flow, just go with the current, and have you and a mate in the water and a guy in the boat, and you can kind of keep moving and covering ground until you find where the fish are.
Go back and listen to the last New Spiro podcast with Trevor too, because we go into quite a bit of depth with regards to reconnaissance and conducting your own finding spots.
Figuratively and literally, yes.
Matt Gill says, when's the next episode of Just the Tips coming out? This is a Submerged Psycho regular segment, isn't it?
Kind of. I'm not sure. It's usually filmed late at night when I'm not sleeping. I don't sleep all that much, so it just depends on when I have the time and trying to think of the right word for it. Not motivation, where something causes you to want to do something.
Inspiration.
That's the word.
Okay, cool. Some other random questions, and moving away from pretty much spearfishing in Southern Queensland. Sending equipment and second-hand gear. What service do you use? Do you just use Australia Post?
Star Trek. So I organise a lot of it through a Dreno and just give them the freight for it, which I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but Star Trek's quite good for sending larger equipment, and it's not super expensive. Australia Post is a lot easier to track and a lot easier to access. The main one is if you're sending a gun, glue it in a PVC pipe. So get a bigger PVC pipe, put the gun inside, glue the caps on. That way, for someone to physically steal that gun, they have to cut the PVC tube open. and they can't bend it or snap it or break it on you.
Okay, cool. Like it. Another quick one. Buying a Spearo boat.
Be prepared to spend a lot of money.
Bring out another 1,000.
In hindsight, and what I would have nowadays, I should have just bought a $100,000 brand new boat at the start and paid it off.
Wow.
So I've spent far more than that repairing and keeping 3 other boats on the water over the last 10, 15 years. So it can be a very difficult thing because it becomes more of an investment of love.
What is the perfect size boat for spearfishing?
That's a difficult question. For me, and how I would answer that, is around 17 to 19 feet. You can get 90% of places, but you're not chewing exorbitant amounts of fuel. Some of these really big cats and really lovely 7-8 metre twin and outboard, great things. But instead of being, let's say, $50 each for 3 people to go out and do a 300-kilometre trip, it's $300 or $400 each. So your fuel costs definitely start to cut into your spearfishing time and availability.
That dog is giving me the shits.
Yeah, it's fine. It adds character.
A friend of mine is thinking about importing a boat from America. Any advice or insights around doing that?
It just depends on the area he's wanting to go into. Some of the American boats are designed for like the massive bays on the inside of Florida, so they've got quite flat, wide bottoms.
Beamy, yeah.
So in swell and in calmer conditions, they can go very, very fast and carry huge loads. But when you bring them out here, which is a lot more choppy, mixed, messy swell, they tend to bang and get thrown around a lot. A lot of divers around southeast Queensland are using very old-fashioned boats with very sharp dead rise.
Yeah.
So they're not particularly stable at rest. They don't make the best line fishing boats, but for diving, they run a lot better through the rougher conditions.
And in particular, we're talking about like the Haynes.
Any of the old copies of the Bertrams, which came out in like the 50s and 60s. So your Haynes boats, not so much the Seafarers. What are they called?
VC. Oh, they're a bit small.
Not so much. But yeah, there's a lot of different new companies that make flops off them, like Cuda Craft and Eden Craft and those kind of things, if you've got lots of money. But most of us are just fixing up the old 70s, 80s Haynes, 17s and 19s.
And outboards, you're a bit of an authority on that.
Everyone I've owned has been horrible and I break them, so...
You do put thousands of hours on them.
Yes. But, yeah, you want to have a reliable one to a certain extent, or try for a reliable one.
Have you ever owned a jet ski?
No.
What's your perception of buying a boat versus a jet ski?
Depends on what you're using. The jet skis aren't as comfortable and don't have the same range, whereas with a boat you can go 100 kilometres offshore. With a jet ski you're kind of restricted to about 20-30 kilometres round trip. You can also carry a lot more fish and a lot more equipment, whereas with a jet ski you're kind of stuck with only being able to have 2 people, your basic equipment, very small room for fish, and you've always got to anchor and kind of swim around the jet ski, whereas with a boat it's easier to drift and do all the rest of the stuff.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, we've kind of covered this off. We've been pretty comprehensive. If you have any more questions about spearfishing in Southern Queensland, join the Southern Queensland Spearfishing Facebook page, and you can find Trev at Submerged Psychos or me over at Noob Spearo. But any questions, chuck them in the comments too, guys. We'll try and sort them out.
Do our best. Always happy to answer messages.
Hopefully, we've been helpful.
Nah, I hope not.
And if not, just give us a big thumbs down, because neither of us give a shit anyway.
We can always do it again.
It's not that we don't give a shit about helping people, but we just don't give a shit about negative comments.
I don't know what I mean.
All right.
It depends on how the comment is written.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, sure.
Hey guys, thanks for listening today. I hope you got a heap out of this interview. If you want to get involved in the conversation, I'd suggest you get over to our YouTube channel and check out the Guide to Southern Spearfishing video up there. It's just Trevor and I chatting away in the garage, and there's a few, you can add more of your questions in there, and I'll tag Trevor and we can do our best to answer your questions. Otherwise, come and join the Noob Spearo community on Facebook. It's a fantastic place to have a conversation, and there's no ego. There's only 2 dickheads on the page, and that's me and Turbo, so you'll feel right at home, and it's a good place to ask your questions and If you're new to this area, definitely connect in there. Trevor's in there as well. There's quite a few local guys, but wherever you are in the world, there's people on there sharing their journey and the issues and obstacles they have and how they're overcoming them along the way. It's a great place if you are in your first couple of years spearfishing. So come along, Noob Spearo Community on Facebook, and answer a couple of questions and I'll slip you in there. So I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and yeah, awesome. As usual, guys, reviews are welcome wherever you listen to the podcast. Thanks for listening. Shrek out. Today's Dynamite Noob Spearo podcast is brought to you by spearfishing.com.au. That's right, the fine folks over at Adreno have been supporting the Noob Spearo podcast since about episode 18, and they help pay the bills around here. Just want to encourage you to check out spearfishing.com.au and use the code Noob Spearo. You can save $20 on every purchase over 200, but it's just a great online shopping experience. The reviews are phenomenal. If you want to check out a new spear gun, new pair of booties, new pair of gloves, someone's used them before, they've written a review, it's on their website, it's all there there for you. Head along to spearfishing.com.au and thank you for shopping with today's major sponsor, Adreno.